we'll call this public hearing, and this is date beginning at 5:01 to be exact, July 15th, 2024. Welcome to this public hearing. We're on this public hearing is authorizing the execution and delivery of an intergovernmental wastewater capacity and service agreement and a project management agreement for wastewater treatment plant expansion in connection with the expansion of the Pendleton Clemson Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant and other matters relating thereto. Just because I know there's been some questions in the past, I'm just going to read about public hearings again very quickly. Section 241, public hearings. The City Council shall hold public hearings for those matters required by law and may hold public hearings for any purpose the City Council deems appropriate. Such public hearings shall be advertised as required by law. If there is no applicable law, public hearings shall be advertised in a newspaper of general circulation in the community at least 15 days prior to such hearing, with notices and an agenda posted at the meeting placed 24 hours before the hearing. A public hearing is understood to be a forum for people interested in the subject matter to present information to the City Council for its consideration as it deliberates on an issue. It is not a forum for debate or argument between members of the council and opponents or proponents or each other. Each speaker shall be limited to 5 minutes unless the City Council authorizes one extension of 3 minutes. The presiding officer may terminate a presentation that is covering the same information as presented by a previous speaker. Such speakers shall be encouraged to simply state their agreement with the previous speaker and bring new information to the subject. In addition to the verbal presentation, written material may be submitted to the City Council for its consideration for up to 2 days following the day of the hearing. Public hearings may be held before or after a regular meeting, but will normally be held at the time separate from other meetings of the City Council, hence today at 5:01. Proponents and opponents will each be limited to a total of 20 minutes for formal presentations. Following up to the 20-minute presentations by the proponents and opponents, an additional period of 40 minutes will be allowed, if needed, to permit comments from the audience. Just wanted to remind everybody, Section 241 about public hearings. So, I will open it up at this point. Benji, or you, or Andy?
Basically, the public hearing is centered around an agreement that we currently already have with Clemson and Anderson County, but we also have several other little agreements around the same issue, amendments, things like that. So what this does is consolidates everything into one package, and it also outlines the project management plan for what we do the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant.
Questions or comments?
Is equal voting, basically.
Benji?
Is equal voting on the issues which we don't have now.
Pendleton and Clemson would have equal voting on issues.
It's like each Anderson County, Clemson, and Clemson all have one vote, whereas now Clemson has two, we have one.
Got it.
Benji, does this change anything with the state?
No. It's operating, it's equivalent, operating by pure water.
Benji, can I ask if it's possible? Yeah. Just to make sure everybody can hear. Appreciate it.
It doesn't change anything with the state.
Okay.
It's just still going to be operated by the management company, the Clearwater Incorporated, and doesn't change anything with DES, which is the old DA.
I was going to say, it's going to take a while to get used to that.
It is. It's going to take. I've told them never get used to it, but there is no change.
Okay.
Other questions from council, from the public? And Jeremiah, I did not see any submitted. Questions, comments? Thank you, Benji.
Thank you.
If there are no other comments, we'll close the public hearing. One last chance. All right, no other comments. We'll close this public hearing, and since we, this one's at 5:30, or can we move? That's what I was. Next meeting will be at 5:30, so it's about 25 minutes from now. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. This is our second public hearing for today. This July 15th, 2024 at 5:30. We're here for this public hearing on 2024 R02 proposed text amendment, non-residential setbacks and PD acreage. As currently drafted, minimum side setbacks in the C, general commercial, CM, commercial mixed use, CP1, neighborhood business, CP2, community business, CP3, highway service, and office professional districts would be amended to 15 feet, and the minimum area for new planned developments would be amended to 4 contiguous acres, excepting those adjoined solely by the R20 or R12. Single-family residential districts would be required to have a minimum area of 5 acres. Just a reminder for the public hearing, I read a long ordinance on the first one. I will not do that again, but if you need reference, please let me know. It's right here. But remember, just public hearings understood to be a forum for people interested in the subject matter to present information to the City Council for its consideration as it deliberates an issue. It is not a forum for debate or argument between members of the council or opponents or proponents or each other, and each speaker shall be limited to 5 minutes unless the City Council authorize one extension of 3 minutes. And please, if you do come up, please make sure you sign in. Jeremiah's got you all set up right there. So I will first bring up Nathan if you wanted to add anything to it at this point. I just read everything, but that's up to you. Okay. So, anyone else? All right, from council, comments? Not open to the public.
So I admit, this is what I proposed, and because I wanted to go back to where we were, I hesitate to say 3.5 to 4 years ago. And in terms of creating opportunities, more opportunities for by right development. And when we have discussed various and sundry developments across town over the past 3 years or 4 years or so, the zero line setbacks have been brought up repeatedly, especially by like Bob, who says, well, we don't want to, it's going to go lot line to lot line. Is that really what you want? And so the answer to that is always no, that's not what we want. So it's in trying to come up with a compromise that both encourages by right development and then sets a standard that we have set by imposing usually setbacks of one form or another. If you look at the Bixby, for example, if you look at other developments, there is a setback, and that is, I don't want to say always because that's never a good idea, but most of the time that is a consideration in planning and in developing. And so I am curious, I know Planning Commission, I'm not sure what the discussion was, Herb, but that I'm curious to see if there was any thought on what would be a compromise then, or if people just like having it at 0. So I am curious to hear the discussion. I'm good. I mean, I just don't know if there was discussion, Herb. I wish I didn't know when it was up for discussion before PC. And that would have been nice to know.
So my name is Herb Tyler. I'm the chair this year of the Planning Commission for the City of Clemson. In reference to this matter, it was discussed at 2 meetings. It was discussed immediately after it was forwarded to Planning Commission for consideration. Jacob brought in, I believe y'all have a copy of all the documents with existing ordinances and what it would be. It was discussed at 2 meetings, one for discussion, and there was a lot of concern in this. There was concern from the standpoint of 30 feet between buildings. If you go to the meeting that we voted on, which was 6/8/2024, if you go to around 1 hour and 18 minutes within that meeting, you'll hear the summary of the discussion on that meeting. There were questions if there were any other cities that had this type of issue or this type of zoning, and the answer was there had only been one. and that was in Travelers Rest, but they do not have a downtown, and it is currently not growing anymore outside of the Doodle Trail. But there was a lot of concern that if we went to, from the people on the Planning Commission, particularly I think John summed it up. The concern was it would force outside developers to come in, or not forced, to go to 4 acres. Everything would get bought up and it would encroach on existing neighborhoods. The second concern is around Bixby and things like that. People want more of a walking community. So 30 feet on one side of the property, 30 feet on the other side of the property would be way too much, and 15 feet from the back would create danger zones. So there was more concerning that the Planning Commission saw the intent of this, but feel like it would have the exact opposite effect.
Of what?
And the opposite effect of reducing or from setbacks, and it would create bigger issues and people amassing within residential districts, buying that property up to amass 4 acres in size.
I feel like we're conflating 2 topics here.
Well, it was 2 topics, and our suggestion was that it got broken down into 2 separate topics, but the way it was presented to us was as one topic, which is how it's presented to you tonight. In that, one is side setbacks, the other is PD development. So it's 2 topics, but it came as one proposed text amendment, so we could only discuss it in that manner because that's how y'all sent it to us. Am I making any sense?
Yes, but yes, that is certainly not the intention. I mean, I
No, no, I
recognize when
get you. I get
I
you,
recognize
Steve.
when I wrote it, and I think when we talked one time that I thought it's 2 different topics.
Right, and so we broke it down. The issue is, so let's break it with the planned developments. Going to a maximum of 4 acres from 2 acres, there's concern that that's going to encroach on existing neighborhoods for people to buy up properties in order to amass that amount of acreage.
But they're doing that now for 2 acres.
Well, then you have to go further back to get 4 acres.
Just going to make bigger projects are going to.
That's what we're
If we
concerned
go to
about.
4 acres or 5 acres, everything is going to be a huge project, which is the exact opposite of what we want to have happening if we want to have smaller scale development in our areas. The way, again, to do this, we are in our comp plan. We're going to have the ability to be looking at all of our zoning ordinances, and we can completely change those now. So this is not the time for us to be, and I said this last time as well, this is not the time for us to be doing this because our comp plan could come back and have completely different recommendations for how we tackle these problems and issues. And I'm just saying this for the crowd's benefit, that how we tackle these issues and make sure that our, if it suggests zoning changes in different areas, we could do this now, and then we're going to end up changing it again in a year, depending on what the comp plan says. And again, I think both of these things that are proposed here do the exact opposite of what the intention potentially is. So, in addition to it just, again, having the unintended consequence of that happening, this, particularly the PD thing, could potentially make it even more likely that big developments are going to be the only option, and you're going to get people that come in that's all they're going to be doing, and instead of getting smaller scale developments. So I support what the Planning Commission did.
Well, all I can tell you is what our discussion was. I'm not here to give you an opinion or anything. I can give you the basis for our vote. It's not a opinion.
No, it's very helpful to know that it was presented as a single text amendment.
But we broke it down into 2. We broke it down into 2. So the second text amendment, about 15 feet, in that, there was a major concern that if you had a property owner, even though within this, it said there could be exceptions made for people downtown. Well, the Planning Commission is not comfortable without legal authorization of what in the world that means. Randomly making exceptions is a concern. So if that is not defined, the second part was walkability. If you have 15 feet and 15 feet on a piece of property, you're talking about 30 feet. If we're needing access for emergency or stormwater, things like that, we found out the fire marshal in any planned development can require something different to make sure that access is available. So 30 feet and 30 feet. So you take this piece of property and you come in here, you take this piece of property, you come in here, and the property next to it, when people are massing that, we're only 7.6 square miles here. It doesn't make sense. It's more for a driving community. If you're in Greenville, some places that would make sense, according to what the Planning Commission felt like. And we do have zoning amendments, and Nathan, I'll have to ask you to refresh me. The walkability part, the 275 feet.
You can't, our zoning code requires you can't have a building longer than 250 feet without a break at some point in the middle of it. So I think a lot of the discussion where you're trying to go is that somewhat we were reinventing the wheel and that these pieces were already in the zoning code.
Nathan,
Sorry.
you come up, yeah, and say it again, sorry, that's what I was just checking in the back, so.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think that was part of the concerns that we were somewhat reinventing the wheel because we already have the requirement that you have to break up a building. I know there's been a lot of discussion since I've been here talking about we didn't want large massings of building lot line to lot line, but our code requires that after a certain amount of feet it has to be broken up anyway. The way that's typically done is with an entrance to a garage or an alleyway of some sort. Grand Mark's a great example. That's a very long building that has the walkways through, but they're covered. So,
But it seems like we're not doing anything related to the sustainability issues that we say we support if we're not creating more green walkways and more green space. And that's one of the things that the Sustainability Commission is going to be focused on, is how to do that. So is that being discussed as part of the comp plan?
sustainability, yeah, it has to be because natural resources is an element of the comp plan, for sure.
One of the things.
Yeah.
Is there any other question that I can answer? I don't mean to be vague. I just want to tell you what we talked about. We talked about it in May, and we talked about it in June, is when it was an action item in June.
I understand the intention. I think it was, a good topic, but points that I hadn't thought of, so glad to hear the details of the conversation.
What I would also tell you, I can come back up and tell you, and I can tell you now, with the comp plan, Nathan and I have some plans to get out and just explain different parts of people, what that is, and to participate. And so y'all be hearing that coming up soon. Did this answer everybody's question about what we talked about?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Don't forget to sign in her. Yep.
He thinks he should have to at this point.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Got called up.
Yeah, still. We're making sure.
I'm the easiest one to find. All you do is
There you
give me my
go.
phone
There you go.
number, everything will show.
There we go, appreciate it. Other comments?
Elaine Richardson, 301 Edgewood Avenue, the previous chair for the Planning Commission and several terms on the Planning Commission. But I first want to remind everybody about what the intent of a PD is. And South Carolina Code Section 6-29-270 states, allow flexibility in development that will result in improved design, character, and quality of new mixed-use developments and preserve natural and scenic features of open spaces. So prior to sometime, Catherine mentioned this, prior to sometime around 21 or 22, we were at 4 acres for a PD in these districts. So in an attempt to try to create something different, we decreased it to 2. But I can tell you about our experience with a 2-acre PD on the Planning Commission and why I think that's not a good idea. So when I was on the PC, we had a PD proposal that came before us that was not quite 2 acres. The developer was able to acquire enough square footage from the property next door to bring it up to 2 acres. Finding the right mix of what was beneficial to the developer and beneficial to the city was a challenge. There was very limited green space and all big trees were to be removed once that PD was approved. We had many meetings and work sessions as we worked through that. As part of the discussion, the 0 lot line for sides was part of it. The position of that building on the lot adjacent to a 2-story business was causing multiple concerns. And I'm talking about Herbert Young, actually. The business already in place had left about an 8 to 10 foot setback on their side. Placing the next building on the new building on the property line would be overwhelming to the business next door. Any repair or upkeep work would have to be accessed through the other business's property. If we want to avoid a canyon effect, as was discussed multiple times in the planning for the College Avenue streetscape, then we don't need, that means some spacing between taller buildings, not directly abutting each other. I'm losing my place here. More setback space would allow for more green space between the building for plants, small trees, even a sidewalk. Look at how minimal the impact of the size of the Bixby was on the restaurant next door. I don't know, I have never measured it, but I'm guessing it's somewhere like 20 to 30 feet between those 2 buildings. 22? Thank you. And there's and maybe that's sufficient then, but it's
Both buildings, that's between the buildings.
Correct.
But that's off their property line, so it's gonna be somewhere between 10 and 11 feet off the property line on each side.
On each side, that's what I'm saying, so maybe 10 is sufficient.
The Bixby, as you recall, we ended up with about 7 or 8 feet off their property line. They moved it back, remember?
To the new building?
The Bixby, not the Bixby, the city building.
Yes, I know that, and I'm gonna talk about it. But anyhow, I think that impact of the Bixby next to the walk-ons with at least a 20-foot setback there, combined between the 2, allows for you to have some green space, some shrubbery, maybe even some small trees, and a meandering sidewalk. And by the way, I see a lot of students when they come back down from class are using that sidewalk to go to the back of the building instead of staying on the main sidewalk and going down the side, I guess, to go in. So if we want to avoid that canyon-like effect, we need some spacing. Let's see. This type will minimize that canyon effect, and I know everybody was concerned about that when we talked about the streetscape planning. I think the setbacks could be different in the C district, and maybe that's what you need to do is tease the C district out of this and leave all the other C districts with some setbacks. And if you think about, if you allow building to building to building abutting all the way down through there, that creates that canyon effect. But because we have R20 right behind it, all you're doing is essentially building a wall that shuts out everything for the R20 that's behind it. And I don't think there would be an issue about gathering property in a R20 to create some kind of planned development without taking into consideration where it is. And I think if it were that, then it would have to be at least 5 acres, and it might be more of a amenable planned development. So for this reason, I think the 4 acres minimum and the proposed setbacks will be beneficial to the feeling of our town, and that we don't want to feel like a huge city. It does seem feasible that council and planning might want to consider pulling out these requirements from the C district and advancing them and addressing them separately. Thanks.
Thank you.
Herb Tyler, 143 Boulder Street.
Weren't you just here?
Yeah, I was just here. One thing I'd like to address, and I do hear that I did not mention last time, and I'm glad Elaine brought it up, was the issue with PDs. PD is its own zoning. So take it as its own zoning. So if y'all wanted a setback in the PD of Signet, all y'all had to do is say, we need a 15-foot setback between the buildings. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. Because if we're saying this, it doesn't make sense. So the point was, if they went and got a little bit of acreage What I'm concerned is them go and get a lot of acreage out of the neighborhood. And one of the things that we did at the last meeting was talk about buffers, and that was another good plan and a good thing that she said, and we're in the middle of that. But buffers need to be real in different areas, and we're in the middle of doing that. So I just wanted to mention to y'all, it is a great concern. It is a great concern that the citizens of this city have brought up, and it's something that the planning department and the planning commission are taking very, very seriously. But I do want to remind you that every PD that comes to you, you have the right, not planning commission, we have no authority in that. We can give you recommendations, but if you wanted that buffer, all you had to do is say, we're going to do it with that buffer.
And Signet's a great example. Signet and that development,
Right.
that PD process.
So I felt like I needed to
did
share
almost
that.
everything that was required, including they increased the setback, the side setback, they increased the rear setback so it would be less impactful on the neighborhood. And the PD process by them getting that little bit of acreage worked exactly the way that you wanted it, because they were ready to go with a straight zoning in that spot. If that PD wasn't done, that would have had it. The setback in the back would have been less, the setback on the sides would have been less, and all of those kind of things. So they increased the setback, and they responded to all of those concerns that Elaine just brought up in that process, and the PD process worked. And if they had to get 2 more acres or 3 more acres to make it a 5-acre thing, that building could have been more massive. Outside of that, we would have had more negotiating room to do some more things there. But the PD process for Signet on 2 acres worked exactly how it was intended to work, and it's better for the neighborhood, and I live in that neighborhood, better for the neighborhood than what a straight zoning project would have been there.
Other comments?
Can I ask Bob what were the amenities for the city out of that PD? Because I felt like we didn't get much. They cut down every one of those huge, beautiful trees.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
I got
Every
some,
one of those
Elaine,
huge-
there's somebody in the very back, way back, telling me what we're hearing, and we're not hearing from the audience,
Okay,
so. and
all right,
it's
thank you.
all-
That's a good
it's
idea.
all-
Anyhow, so we did do that, and we
Which
had
I
to fight.
appreciate, so,
We
yeah.
had to fight to get those 7 acres because they didn't want to give up. They wanted no, it's 8, not 7 feet. I meant not acres, 7 feet, because they didn't want to give that up because they wanted to put that 0 to 0,
Yeah.
and we had to fight to get that 7 feet.
And that's what you can do in a PD. In straight zoning, you can't do it. So if they had just done straight zoning, we would have had no way to have that fight, negotiation, whatever you call it. If they had come with straight zoning, we would have had 0 ability to do that. So you can call it a fight, but a PD is a negotiation, and being a PD, it gave us the ability to negotiate the bigger side setback, the bigger rear setback,
Because it was a
the
PD.
step down, the step in the back, because it was a PD. And if we had required 4 acres, they probably couldn't have accomplished that, and we would have gotten the straight zoning lot line, side lot line to side lot
That's
line.
why
It
the
would-
straight zoning needs to be fixed too.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say next, is that comp plan right now, I would be totally in favor of us saying, hey, let's not have any more PDs in the downtown, and let's get our straight zoning right with all of these things that we're talking about, with character and height and setbacks and sustainability issues and that kind of thing. Let's get really good, solid, straight zoning, and at the scale and everything that we want as part of the comp plan process, and have that be what guides us, and then we don't have to worry about everything, these massive PD projects that come along.
That wasn't really her question.
No, I want to know what you think that PD, after it was all approved, what it offers to this town
Well,
and to the citizens.
Again, no,
Because it's 2 acres crammed with student apartments, 5 stories tall. There is that setback in the front, and they may have a little bit of stuff there with bicycle racks. But when they cut, their green space is limited to that. The little bit of green space for that project is inside of that building.
Well, not necessarily,
there's
there's a
great-
25-foot setback in the back.
in the back, and you've got
Right.
that in the back, and now you've got a way to get through on the side that, again, you would not have had with straight zoning in that place. You would have had what was the rear setback, 15 feet? Previously 10 or 15 feet on the rear setback, so you got the additional space there, and we got the, this project is in where we're getting the
She
development
understands that
fees.
part, but you haven't answered her question.
We got the development fees, the impact fees and those kind of things that we can
Okay.
use to
That will help pay for
make,
extra
will
cost.
help pay for all of these other things that we want to do around the city. Because of the Parks and Rec fee, we can do that too, improve parks, get new land, plant new trees, all of those kind of things.
And how
you
does
can
that
do.
pan out against what it costs the city for them to build there with sewer and water and all of that?
They pay the impact, they're paying for those things.
And that's
for
the impact fee, right?
That's the impact.
The impact fees and all that kind of, now that we have the impact fees in place at the right levels, the new development pays for the capital, will pay for the capital costs of all of those things that you're talking about.
So, all right.
Two things. The 25 plus on the back side, the Knox Avenue side, it's only 3 stories. It's not 5. It's 5 on the straight side. So I just want to make sure that everybody
Right.
understood that. It's not 5 on
Right.
the back side.
Which is what it would have been straight zoning. They could have done.
Well, the other thing about straight, yes,
Yeah.
yes. But then the other piece about that is the trees were doomed the day those properties were sold.
Because we don't keep trees, we just cut them
Well, not
down.
only that, no, but I mean, the point of it is, if it had been straight zoning, they're doomed, or if it's a PD, they're doomed.
If it's a development, they're doomed.
Right, they're doomed.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? No other comments? All right, last chance. Want to make sure everybody has something? Yep, yes.
Hi. I'm going to sign in, I promise, after. Nanda Edgerton, 213 Charleston. In regards to all this, Bob, you were saying that if it was straight zoning for the Signet project, it would be worse. So isn't there a zoning tool that's referred to as an overlay that might be an effective tool for that area, for the city to impose, for lack of a better word, so the city can have more control? So that way you can avoid street zoning and you can avoid PD, if I'm understanding it correctly, and just put it like the city wants to see it, or what's the best for.
Yeah, that's a way that you do with existing zoning, but you got to go through the process to create the overlay. When someone comes, if you don't have the overlay in place, you can't just do an overlay on the fly to make that happen. So that would be a way that, if we didn't change our complete zoning for downtown or CM or C areas, you could do like an overlay that says, this is now what's, permissible here in and out of the deal. You can't just do it on the fly, right, Nathan?
Can I ask Nathan a question?
Yeah, sure.
Nathan, if a project isn't approved yet, right? If a developer's coming in and they're presenting something and just starting the process with a planning commission, can an overlay at that point be set up? Or before anything gets approved? While it's still being presented?
Hypothetically, if they'd have to almost run concurrently, and you'd have to approve the overlay before the development was proposed. The thing I'll chime in is remember these PD processes take a very long time, so yes, it probably could happen that an overlay was passed in the amount of time.
So that might be something, I don't know, if it was me, that would might take a little pressure off everybody, just to try to look into, maybe look into that tool more and see the advantages of it. And the only way I learned about this overlay thing is because I listen to the Lake radio station every morning while I'm in my car, and Scott Mulder was talking about overlays for something that they want to do in Seneca. And when he was explaining it, I was like, hey, that's cool. So I don't know, just something to think about, maybe.
I like the idea of overlay districts, but again, that would probably be almost or more at least as complicated as having it go forward as a PD. But if it was a smaller area, and again, if the property owner had purchased it, and then we say it's got to be an overlay, that also could have some legal things. You should have the overlay in place before.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a
Yeah.
defensive move.
Yeah,
It needs to be an
yeah.
offensive move. So
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if we came in with an overlay after somebody had proposed a development.
Well,
we'd
that's what I
probably-
was trying to find out. I mean, I would think that it would be a problem if it was after the project
Or even
was-
during, it would probably,
Or even during
even
it.
during when they came and you're like, we want to do an overlay. So, this kind of thing, you do those again proactively
In this,
before.
right, proactively, great word,
Yeah,
one of my
so-
favorite words.
But it's a great idea, and I love overlay
Okay, well,
districts as
I
a planning.
I just wanted to put it out there.
Yeah, it's great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Overlays were brought up years ago when we did the Build a Better Clemson. That was a whole thing we talked about for the downtown corridor specifically, so that can definitely be brought up when we go through the
Yeah.
comp plan
It's been
process.
discussed,
Yeah.
just no action on it.
Right, so this, again, perfect timing.
Yep. And again, with the comp plan coming, that's the time to start doing these things as part of the comp plan process.
Other comments? Good discussion. All right, last chance again. We'll wrap up this public meeting, a public hearing, and it is 6:01. We'll start the regular city council meeting at 6:40 tonight.
6:44.
Yeah,
That
everybody's
was what
looking
was,
at.
it was posted
Yeah, so
publicly.
everybody's looking at me. I'll make sure everybody's aware. Yes, it was posted as 6:40. It was an error when it was posted. And so we're going to abide by what it was posted, even though we did everything properly. I know Jeremiah and I talked about it, that within 24 hours, we posted the right time. We just feel,
Posted on the wrong day, and then we caught it like at 6:30 last night and had it changed by 6:37.
But you have to do the
so
24
you have to
hour.
have the 24 hours.
We need to make sure that we're.
We were very tight on that 24-hour notice, so we're going to start at 6:40 tonight, just FYI. So 6:40. All right, well.
John's tummy's already grumbling,
Yeah,
he's hungry.
we'll reconvene in about 30